Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, A Day in the Life Being an ISCA Board Member. I'm Britannia Mori. I am an ISCA Board Member. I am the ICANN Ad Hoc Position and Marketing Communications Chair. And today we are joined by ISCA President Amy Hospodarski, Elementary Vice President Brandon Drew, President-elect Corey Graven, and Secretary Jacqueline Lissenhop. We may have a couple more board members pop in, but that's who we have today at the moment. And today's webinar is to talk about the upcoming board elections and the opening positions and what it's like to be an ISCA board member, what it's like to serve on the board and be involved in different opportunities. And we're here to answer questions. So for those of you that are attending with us live, please feel free to type your questions in and we will be happy to answer those as we go through. So I'm going to open it with just some questions and then invite each board member as they want to join in the conversation to give their thoughts on that topic. So our first question gets to the purpose of the ISCA board. What is our purpose and why is the board important?
Ooh. Don't everybody all talk at once.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in first. So this is Corey, and as Britt said, I'm the ISCA President-elect currently. And I think I go back to the mission. I think our mission sums up a lot of the work of the board, and that's advancing the academic, career, and social emotional development of our students through excellence in school counseling. And I think that encompasses a lot of the board's work that we try to do, and that's kind of to go further, I guess. I think of it as building capacity among school counselors around the state by connecting and providing resources and supplements to their work in their schools to be able to meet the needs of students. So it's a lot of support that the board tries to do and reach out and make sure that counselors across the state are able to have those connections and the resources that they need to do the work. Because every counselor is different areas of the state, different buildings, different districts. So.
And this is Amy. I would add to that. I would echo everything that Corey said, and I would also add to that we represent school counselors and work on behalf of school counselors, and we are solely focused on school counseling. So while there might be other professional organizations that touch some of the work of school counselors in one way or another, our focus is solely on school counseling. And to that end, ISCA works on behalf of school counselors in Iowa by advocating for our roles in a variety of places. We represent school counselors in Iowa on various boards and advisory councils and other things throughout Iowa, and so we often represent and work on behalf of school counselors in that way.
I think playing off of what Amy said, it's just having a voice. The ISCA board is the voice for school counselors in many capacities, whether it's advocating in Des Moines on the Hill or representing on different boards like Amy mentioned, or helping fellow school counselors advocate on a day-to-day basis just for everyday position. It's just being advocates for each other and for positions and for what we think is important for the role. So our next kind of topic that we want to get into, the question is, what would you recommend as a first step to getting more involved with ISCA? But before I open that up to everybody, thought I would mention the positions that might be opening up, and we'll mention those again at the end. But the upcoming positions, every year we always have President-elect open, because the presidential position is a 4-year term. But then this year we'll also have 2 vice president positions opening up. So as you're thinking about first steps to getting involved, thinking about what the open positions might be each year, and some of them are appointed, some of them are elected, but that's always a good place to start as well. But I would like to open up to everybody else. What would you recommend as a first step to getting more involved with ISCA?
I guess I will kind of step in on this one, and I bet Corey would kind of agree. I think maybe doing the secretary position is kind of a good way to get your foot in the door. It's just kind of a way to be a part of the board and kind of see all the different components that are put together to, do the conference, to do all these different supports for the counselors, and still have a say, but, kind of more so like you're just taking the notes and being a part of it. Whereas like when you're the president in some of these other positions, you have more kind of duties.
Well, I think I would jump in here. I ran for vice president, and most of the reason I did that was to try to get my voice in on the board. But I would agree with Jacqueline that going ahead and volunteering or being part of those other positions would probably be a great way to do that. I honestly I ran the first time and I got kind of disheartened by not getting elected, and I kind of felt like I missed maybe a little bit of an opportunity getting to be able to network. But I got fortunate enough to get elected this next time, and it was a pretty cool thing. And like being part of the board is like a lot more, I guess, for a lack of a better term, a lot more chill than I kind of thought. I thought it'd be kind of an intimidating, kind of scary kind of deal, but it's honestly, it's really not. It's a group of people just trying to push the agendas forward, just stuff that we all want to do. And unfortunately, as counselors, a lot of times we're just worried about what we're doing with our students and families and not necessarily advocating and pushing for our jobs just because we're just used to doing that. But it is something important, especially at the state level, making sure that our voice is heard.
This is Amy, and I love what Brandon just said about he ran and wasn't elected the first time and tried again. So I think that's a message that needs to be underscored. We have more than one person on our board who maybe ran for a position and wasn't elected and came back in a different position because they just really wanted to be involved in one way or another. That being said, being elected is not the only way to be involved on the board. You can pursue an appointed position, which is a little bit different, or you can get involved by just being on a committee. And that's a way to kind of touch a little bit of the work that ISCA is doing without being a part of the board and kind of get your feet wet a little bit to see what it might be like, get to know a few of the people on the board. And so there's lots of ways to be involved. And so I would just encourage folks not to get discouraged if your first plan doesn't work.
Yeah, and this is Corey. And I think anybody attending or that will be listening to the webinar, I mean, this is a good first step too of just getting information. And I think reaching out to any of us is a fantastic way to get some information, you know, of what does a year look like, and what does, you know, the things that we're going to talk about today, maybe even a little bit more in depth as far as what the board, you know, how someone gets involved and how that looks throughout a typical school year. But I definitely think Amy's right on. There's a lot of ways to become involved and get some input and to collaborate and talk with board members, and that's through our committees. And those are really important for us in the work that we do. And even though there's some of those elected positions may be leading those committees or organizing things, that's very important. And it's nice to be able to be a part of that process to see how that all works as well. That just will help later on in becoming a possible member of the board.
So there's been a couple mentions of the committees, so I think we'll kind of head in that direction for a few minutes and talk about, so I think we've already kind of established you don't have to be a board member to be on a committee, but I think we should talk a little bit about how the committees work. So I can kind of kick things off. I chair the Marketing Communications Committee, and I have 2 committee members that aren't board members, and they help me with, or they help the committee with writing different, sometimes they're writing emails that go out to members, sometimes they're helping with sections of the website, or they'll do research on things, and they help with a lot of the writing and the communications pieces, and they don't come to board meetings. We do all of our meetings for committees. We do conference calls and we do emails back and forth. So I think we meet, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year, more so when necessary, less so when not. And that's how my committee works. But it's really great to have non-board members join that committee because they've been able to provide a lot of ideas that maybe we hadn't thought of because we're all in the same bubble. And now we're getting some outside ideas. And that's been really helpful for my committee. And we have several other committees. Guys, jump in if I forget one, but we have an advocacy committee. We have a membership committee. We have conference committee, which I know Corey will love people to volunteer for the conference committee next year.
Absolutely.
We have a scholarship committee. We have an awards and recognition committee. Am I missing any?
We do have a financial committee, but it's a little bit different than the rest of them. Their work is not ongoing, but we need people to review our financials once a year. And so we like to have people to call on to be objective from the board. We can't have board members be involved with that, and just to preserve that objectivity. So we have people involved with that too.
Any other comments about committee work, how they work, or your experiences being on committees?
Yeah, I think I'm on the advocacy committee. I'm pretty sure I am. But I went ahead and I went to UNI the other day, and I went and talked to first-year grad students about what ISCA is and about just kind of what it would be if you were to become a member or if you were going to come to conference. And I found that there was a lot of really good questions. And one thing I found interesting was the fact that, honestly, it didn't seem like many people in the room knew we existed. But at the same token, if I didn't have someone come in there and tell me that the state level organization existed, I don't know necessarily that I would either. So, like I say, it was a really good chance to get out and talk to new students. And it was surprising how many questions they had, and honestly, how comfortable I felt when I was in there, because I've been at this for 15 years, and I just went in and started talking, and it was a lot easier than I thought. I was kind of expecting to be intimidated, but I was surprised after about like 5 minutes. I was like, you're just asking me questions about my job. And it's, like I say, it's important to have people understand that this job isn't nearly as scary or as intimidating as you think it is. It's actually, honestly, I think it's probably the best thing I do every day. So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I just think that those are important, and it's fun to get to work on those, and even being involved on the board and being in those committees at the same time. As far as when I started on the board, it was a good balance, and it was fun to network and things outside of those board meetings, doing the work. And that's really, the way that things just keep carrying on throughout the year, of things that get done. And it just doesn't all happen on those Saturdays a few times a year that we meet as a board. And so the committee work is kind of that, the grassroots stuff that's happening out in our districts and with people that want to get involved, and kind of to expand these things across the state. And I think that's really important for the board. So all of that's important work, and then it's just a great way to talk to those board members and to get a little bit more information about what ISCA is all about, and how to get involved more.
Awesome. So Corey just mentioned our Saturday meetings. So I think that's a good segue to talk about how board meetings work and the time commitment that we might have for that.
Well, we meet 4 times a year. Typically, most of our board meetings are in Des Moines. We do have one meeting in the summer. That's our board meeting in LDI, Leadership Development Institute. That's a 2-day deal. And that one is at the discretion of the president. So typically it's near where the president calls home base. So we've had that in lots of different places. But we meet 4 times a year, in September, in January, in April, and then in July. And then we have our conference too. And we all attend conference. Meetings usually start about 9 o'clock and we shoot to be done by 2 o'clock. We have a lunch in there, and sometimes if we get done early, there's time for committee work after those. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that covers it. So what would you guys say your experience level has to be before you join the board? I know for me, I had 0 experience. I'm not a school counselor. I represent ICANN on the board, and this was my first board experience, and I learned everyone's so inviting that you learn a lot. So for me, it was none.
I think it's not. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I can agree with you, Brittany, which is that I think in some ways, like even if you're just starting off as a school counselor, it might be a good experience because there are so many, you know, people at different levels in the school counseling that I just feel like it's such a great way to collaborate, to kind of troubleshoot. So I think kind of any level is good.
Yeah, I agree with Jacqueline. This is Corey. And I think it's less of experience necessarily, as it is kind of understanding the role that you might be in on the board and, you know, carrying out the mission of the board, and having the open-mindedness to do that and to get involved, and work with the board and you know, meet the goals that we set out to do. So I think it's more of having that open mind and wanting to collaborate and work with people and try to carry out that work.
I think the one position that is sometimes beneficial to have had a little bit of experience somewhere on the board is maybe the president position. And I only say that because Laurel Clausen, who was our past president last year, she joined the board without any prior experience. And she had said, I wish I would have had a little more experience prior to joining, just because, and our newer board members can probably speak to this, but it takes some time to kind of figure out how everything works. And Brandon's right, we are a pretty chill group because after all, we are school counselors, so you don't get nicer people than that. But it takes a little bit of time to kind of figure out how everything works, how, you know, how our reports work and how that all goes. And I can remember being in my first year on the board and not understanding even how the positions rotated. And so at the time, the person that was past president, I was disheartened to find out that she wasn't at the September meeting because she had rolled off the board, and so a new person had stepped into that position. But I didn't even understand how those positions rolled at that point. So I had a lot to learn personally. So I think for myself, it has helped me. I was elementary vice president before I ran for president-elect, and having that additional experience has helped me to get a perspective on how things work, and I didn't have to have a learning curve of how things worked.
Yeah, I would agree with Amy on that. And Jacqueline mentioned this earlier. I started the board on the board as secretary, and that was huge for me as far as just not only wanting to continue on the board and be involved, but having having the knowledge of how things worked. And definitely the secretary position was nice because you know, just really keeping, you know, tabs on the conversations and things that were happening on our board meetings and things throughout the year. So I would definitely agree that I feel a lot more, you know, confident in moving forward into a president position after spending some time on the board previously.
Yeah, I think that it helps. The 4 president roles have so much more responsibility that being an appointed position or even a vice president first, you get to kind of, you sit back a little bit and you get to observe and learn a lot more. Whereas, I mean, president-elect, one of the first responsibilities is, you know, to help with the conference session planning. So there's not as much of a easing in period for the president positions. There's a lot of responsibility every one of those 4 years. So I would agree with everyone that starting in another role and learning and observing, and that's very helpful. I want to pick on something that Corey said about that it's not about your experience, it's about your willingness to engage and understand your role, and talk about what the key responsibilities of a board member are. What are those expectations, and some of the roles and responsibilities.
I would say one of the most important things, well, we have job descriptions for each of our roles and our policies and procedures, so I won't go into details for that, but part of being a board member is prior to each meeting, we send out a reminder, and there's a form for board report. You won't have a board report every time, but you fill out your board report and get it in by the deadline, and then I create the agenda, and then the agenda is put out prior to the meeting, as well as any other materials that we might be using for the meeting. So reviewing those prior to the meeting and making sure you're coming to the meeting prepared to discuss anything that we might be talking about. I think that's an expectation. I think meeting attendance is important as well. As we only meet 4 times a year, if you miss one meeting, you've missed 75% or you've missed 25% of our meetings. And people lead busy lives, so we understand that sometimes things come up, but generally meeting attendance is important. I also think just understanding that as you take a step onto the board, it's not your agenda, you're working for school counselors in Iowa. So just kind of thinking with that lens and that hat of, what can we do as a board and in your position on the board to promote our mission, as Corey said, to advance the academic, career, and social emotional development of all students through excellence in school counseling. And so just thinking from that perspective as well.
Anyone else want to talk about their responsibilities or roles?
I guess I could talk about with the secretary position. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. With the secretary position, you're a part of the meetings and you take notes, but you also have that opportunity to also, talk about things that you're noticing. You also write a board report, and so you're still very much a part of the board.
So I have an ad hoc position, so I'm a non-voting member, which is fine. I don't vote on any of the things that the board talks about, but I have an equal role in discussing anything that the board is discussing, which I've always found helpful. So each position has a little bit different responsibility, but everyone has a voice at the table, and everyone gets to chime in and contribute their ideas and their thoughts to whatever we're discussing before decisions are made, which is nice.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said. That working on behalf of school counselors and kind of taking that lens when we are discussing things and thinking about priorities. And then I think it's just just kind of staying on top of things and having organization and being willing to take the time to communicate with fellow board members and follow up with things. Those are important pieces to it as well, because there is a lot of communication that happens outside of when we're all together, and that's something that is just important and helps things progress along and just keeps that communication going. So those are just some important things to think about that is important to the rules.
So we're going to shift. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay. So we're going to shift a little bit and talk about why did each of you decide to join the board, and what are the benefits you feel you receive from being on the board?
Well, I guess I would say that the reason that I joined the board was to give a voice to elementary school counselors, and due in large part to I had seen some stuff going on in other districts and other places where the ISCA model wasn't being followed. I wouldn't say to a T, but sometimes not at all, where there was a blurring of the role, where it was looking at more of a disciplinary role rather than just simply a counselor as a trusted adult. I feel like the more that we advocate for our role, that we'll actually be doing the job that we're supposed to do. Part of my issue is that when we blur that, then we kind of look at our profession in a different way. And it's hard to fund something if we don't know exactly what we're doing. So for my liking, that's a lot of the reason that I ran for vice president, and just, again, to try to educate people, not just counselors, but other people around us, exactly like what we're doing. So when I went to the Hill and spoke with some of our legislators, and I've been talking to some local people around here, just letting them know exactly what it is that we do versus what they think that we do, because in the past it used to be, or if you watch TV, it's like, well, my guidance counselor told me to do this or fill out this application, but it's so much deeper and so much more meaningful than, I mean, it's not just that simple paper. It's a lot more than that.
I would say a big reason that I joined, some kind of similar to what Brandon had said, which is being able to advocate for the school counseling position, as well as just advocating for school counselors in general, being able to collaborate with a bunch of other school counselors, and then in the end just helping school counselors with the different things that they might need help with.
I got involved in the board because I had at that time, my area, AEA, had sort of a counselors group, and I had some leadership experience with that, and was encouraged by someone in that organization to get involved with the ISCA board. And so it was through that encouragement of someone else before me encouraging me to do that I kind of decided to throw my hat in the ring, so to speak. And so I wanted to have kind of like what Brandon and Jacqueline has said. I am passionate about school counseling, so it allows me to channel that passion into some positive action. And I will say that I'm eternally grateful for the people who encouraged me to pursue that, because it was a little bit daunting, kind of like Brandon said. I think he alluded to that. A little bit scary to step into that role, even though I'd had board experience when I became president-elect. Still pretty daunting to take that on. But the benefits from being part of the board have been too numerous to even mention. So it's been a very good experience.
Yeah, and similar to Amy, I also joined the board because someone that was on the board currently I was involved with through my even grad school work, and early on into counseling, and it was that conversation of, hey, this getting involved is just a great way to really dive into the profession and to know what's happening around the state and to try to have an impact on that. And it was a little, I would say too, for me, it was a little bit of hesitation, like, really, after a few years of counseling, being a school counselor, is this something that I could just jump into and do, and how much impact can I have? And I think I found out that it's not just one person, it is a collective impact that we're trying to make, but that everybody brings together so many different backgrounds and ideas and personalities and talents. So it's just finding that it's fun to find that area that individually I can help and bring ideas and different perspectives. And there's been a lot of great benefits to being on the board. probably one is just the people. Truly, it is a very close-knit group that is very supportive of each other. And, outside of the work of, progressing our profession, it's just a great group to be around, and to have that support, and to, really kind of have a chance to, put our passion into practice, and, be making a difference across the state with things and helping the profession as a whole. It's been great.
All right, our last question, the fun one. So, what is your favorite part of being a board member? For me, it's the people. I'm going to jump in. I love the work, and I am a passionate advocate for education, but through my work with the board, that has shifted slightly to have a lot more focus on the school counselor. I love the work that you do, and I'm a proud supporter and advocate of that. But the people that I have gotten to work with over the last 8 years are amazing, and the passion and the work that I get to see and be part of is fantastic. And I love coming to meetings and being collaborative and listening to all these ideas come together, and then seeing the results of what we all accomplish together. So that's my favorite part.
I would say that my favorite part is very similar to what Britt had just said, which is, I'm very passionate about school counseling, and I love the different people that I get to work with when I'm on the board. And, it's great knowing that, all the stuff that, we talk about at these meetings, and then, putting together the conference, it's just nice to see the end result and knowing that you got to be a part of that.
I'm going to fudge a little bit because I kind of have two, but they sort of fit together. One is I can remember attending the ISCA conference for the first time and coming back to my building feeling like I had had a shot of vitamin something, and it was like I had just started the year all over again. I had this renewed energy and sense of purpose, and just was so energized and invigorated from being around other people who do what I do, and had shared that passion. And so being on the board allows me to get that dose all the time. So that's what I like about that. And with that, I'm in a small district. I'm the only elementary school counselor in my district. I have great middle school and high school counselor, and we meet regularly. But it's just great to be around other people who do exactly what you do, and that makes my network just that much bigger. I have a lot of other people that I can talk to and go to when I have questions or need help with something. So that would be my reason.
Well, I think I'd say my favorite part of being on the board, even though it hasn't been very long at this point, I would echo the sentiment that I enjoy the humans that I am with on the board. But I would also say, again, just getting that voice out there, and I'm going to be quite a bit more vocal in this coming year, and I got some plans for that. But again, being around a group of like-minded people who really want school counseling to be pushed forward, and making sure that we keep our jobs. Because one of the things that can happen very quickly, and it has happened to me in the past, is that if we don't advocate and we don't have a group of people, like I really will admit, we are very good advocates for this. And without it, we could very easily not be around. So I really do appreciate the level of advocacy, which honestly, to tell you the truth, I didn't know if I'd be that comfortable with, but I'm a lot more comfortable than I thought initially. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, but I kind of mentioned it already a little bit on my last question that, the people are a big part of it. I'm glad Amy mentioned, getting a shot of something and being able to, kind of kickstart yourself back in your own work. And that's it. That really is true. I think a lot of times after collaborating on the board and getting together and digging into some of these things, it really is a renewed sense of energy. I know I feel when I go back in my own district and community. Which is nice. It's nice to just have that support. I think the jobs that we do get very, very complex, and there's a lot going on. And so being able to be around people that are as passionate and are doing that work, it's just a great outlet for that. And then being able to take, we're all learning too. Like, we're not all experts, so we're taking a lot of information and a lot of stuff back that we learn from each other, to be able to do the work that we do even better. So it's not only sharing, but it's also really getting a lot out of being able to work with great school counselors and people that support school counseling around the state.
Was that everybody?
I think so.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here, but know that if you're listening to this as a recording and we've sparked your interest and you want to learn more, reach out to anyone on the board. We are always happy to answer additional questions. For those of you that joined us live, thank you so much for your interest, and we hope you'll take that next step and join a committee or run for office or apply for an appointed position. Our elections are coming up. We're going to open up 3 positions are going to open up soon, and you can check out which positions are available on the website. Just visit iowaschoolcounselors.org and visit the About Us section under Board Elections, and you can see the applications and the job descriptions and the timeline. Everything is on the website. And appointed positions always open up in the spring, late February, early March, so be on the lookout for those as well. And we would encourage anyone with any interest in joining the board to take that next step and reach out, ask some questions, fill out an application. Thank you to the board members who took the time to join us today, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.